And so we talk with Attorney Tom Kauffman this morning, one of the candidates for Indiana County Court of Common Pleas. And good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us here today. A few questions for you, and again, our questions will be the same questions for each of the four candidates, and we'll just see where they go and how many questions we get through. So the first one is, what are the one or two things that you feel the voters need to know about you and your judicial philosophy as you seek this position?
Well, first of all, I would say I think what is important about me and what separates me from the other candidates is just my overall experience and my diverse experience. I handle criminal law, I do children cases, I've done property law, I've done real estate tax appeals, I've done medical malpractice. I just feel of all the candidates running, I have by far the most experience, and that's very important because in a given week, a judge in Indiana County may see multiple types of cases and has to be ready to handle those or have some insight to all those different types of cases.
Has this been an ambition of yours for a while?
Yes. When I came out of law school, I had clerked for the Commonwealth Court, and then I also had the privilege of clerking for Judge Martin and Judge Ruddick. And early on in my career, I always felt that the ultimate thing an attorney could accomplish would be someday, if the community he practiced in felt he was a good enough person and a good enough lawyer to be elected judge, that was the ultimate thing he could do.
This particular seat on the Court of Common Pleas was just created a few years ago. Since its inception, it's traditionally been dedicated to family-oriented cases. How would you like for the court to be structured moving forward?
Well, I would say a few things with that. First of all, a few years ago, I think it was closer to 12, and even though Judge Hanna primarily did family law, it has been explained to me by Judge Bianco and Judge Martin that this is a full-fledged judgeship. And quite frankly, if it were only limited to family law, I would not be interested. I would wait until a full-fledged judgeship was available. I do think there will be family law in it, but that's why, as I explained, my experience is so important because a judge in Indiana County has to be ready to handle all the types of cases that can come in. I would be prepared to do that. As far as how my court would operate, I would expect three things from everybody that came into that courtroom. One is that they treated the court with respect and all the other people in it, that they would be prepared, and that they would be honest. I would expect this from all the attorneys, all the parties involved, and they would get that in return from the court. I would come in there every day, treat everyone with respect, be prepared, and then be honest with people about why decisions were made. They may not always agree with them, but they would always know where I was coming from or why I was making my decision.
In your experience, just watching judges conduct court proceedings in Pennsylvania, what are some of the more difficult aspects of being a common pleas court judge in our state?
Well, one of the things that I have a lot of experience with is working with children. And there are times, and there are difficult decisions where a judge has to remove a child from a home. And a lot of times the child doesn't want to be removed, the parents don't want the child to be removed, but the evidence supports that it's in the best interest of the child to be removed. And those are sometimes heartbreaking decisions or tough decisions to make, but as a judge, sometimes you have to do what is in the best interest of the child, or you have to do what you know the law says you must, even when it's a difficult situation. And I'm aware that on a regular basis, sometimes you'll be making decisions that people will not agree with, and you have to have the confidence and the experience to recognize that what you're doing is right. Because a lot of times in a few months after you make that decision, people will come back to you and say, you know, I didn't agree with it at the time, but I understand now, or it turned out to be for the best. And those are the tough calls that judges make, but if you have the experience, you've researched things, and you've really tried to make the best decision, time will show that those are good decisions.
Are there other aspects of the position, whether it's Indiana County Court or just Court of Common Pleas in general, that trouble you, that you would like to see changed?
No, I'm not running because I think there's a problem with our courts or there's something I want to change. If anything, I'm running because I want to get in there and help. We only have 2 judges now. These judges work very hard. I want to go in there and try to be an equal to them in every way, handle as many cases as I can, and actually help relieve some of the burden on our courts and judges. I don't see a problem in our courts other than just we need more good people involved to help these cases move through. We have a lot of cases, as I indicated to some people. We have hundreds of children and youth cases that happen every year, and then there's always kind of new things that come up that the court has to deal with. Most recently, we had the tax assessment appeals. That brought hundreds of unexpected new cases into the court system. So you have to have good judges that are there and available, so when these unexpected or new things come up, you have the proper and adequate amount of court staff and judges to handle them.
Our topic this morning is the Indiana County Court of Common Pleas position that is open in the spring primary. There are 4 candidates, and one of those, Tom Kauffman, we are speaking with right now. There have been some Supreme Court rulings in recent years that have affected sentencing guidelines for both juvenile and adult cases, and cases for which a juvenile has been tried as an adult. If we could talk about that issue a little bit, do you favor mandatory minimum sentences, and should there be a separation between juveniles having adult cases tried as adults as opposed to people who are adults in that same situation?
Well, I'd first begin with no one has more experience with juvenile law than I do. I've been Indiana County's juvenile defender for almost 12 years, and basically I am appointed to represent every juvenile that's charged in Indiana County. In that capacity, I'm very familiar with the juvenile laws, and certain times when a juvenile will be attempted to be certified as an adult or is charged as an adult and has to try to be decertified. So I'm very aware of juvenile law. Juveniles are treated differently than adults. The purpose of a juvenile is not to punish them if they've done something wrong, but rather to get them rehabilitation so that they may become a productive member of society when they become an adult. In the adult realm, the purpose of a criminal sanction is to punish them or for it to be a penalty, and that's different. Mandatory minimum sentences, a lot of them have recently been overturned, and I guess my point as a judge would be I will follow the law as the legislature has enacted the law, but sentences need to fit the actions, or I would say the criminal crime that a person's been convicted of. And we have standard ranges, and you need to look in and decide if a person deserves to have a mitigated sentence or it needs to be enhanced due to their history or special circumstances of the case involved.
As a jurist, when something would be overturned, and you're the judge in question here, and something is the court, the higher court has determined that something that you did wrong in proceeding with the case mandated that it must be tried again. How would you feel about that?
Well, I personally would feel disappointed because we always, every day I go to work, try to do the best job I can, and no one wants to be told that they were wrong. So personally, I would see that as that I did something wrong or a disappointment. I would try to learn from that. I would want to determine what I did that was wrong and make sure it didn't happen again. We're all humans. We all have faults. We all make mistakes. So that probably will happen. I can tell you personally, I would not take it well. I don't like to lose or do things wrong, but I also would step back and say, okay, what was wrong? How can we do this better and ensure that it doesn't happen again? And one of the great opportunities for whoever will become the next judge is they will be working with President Judge Martin, who's been a judge for almost 30 years, and Judge Bianco. So they will have 2 great mentors to go to if they have questions or there are close calls to hopefully avoid making mistakes that might be overturned. And that's a big part of the reason I feel the timing is perfect for me now to run.
We're talking with attorney Tom Kauffman, who is running for a Court of Common Pleas in Indiana County. Should there be a specific court for specific types of cases, such as those involving veterans or those involving drug offenses?
Well, I don't know if it should be a specific court, but I also would say we need to recognize, certainly veterans, that they've had different life experiences than many people, and those life experiences need to be taken into account when dealing with those people because they have impacts on them. It affects their mental health, sometimes their ability to secure jobs. So I don't know if a special court could be arranged, but I do think, like anything, you need to look at every case individually, who these people are, what is their background, what makes them who they are, and then also be compassionate to their situation. If you're a person with a drug issue, that person should be given the ability to get rehabilitation, get treatment, and hopefully they can work through it. If they're given opportunities and they can't make changes or they're unable to get away from it, then you have to look at sterner or I would say, more penal type measures.
What, in your opinion, are the factors that are involved in a plea bargain?
Well, there's always factors. When a criminal case is brought, a defense attorney, which I've done for years, I've even been involved with 2 murder trials here in Indiana County, you look at all the allegations, you look at the facts. Sometimes after it's been reviewed, a defense attorney or even the person charged will point out holes in the Commonwealth's case. Maybe there are procedural errors. Are there errors with the search warrants? Are there things that possibly will prevent certain evidence from coming into trial? If that's the case, then a prosecutor has to consider being open to a plea bargain because they may take a case to trial and lose all of the case. So a plea bargain is a compromise, and anyone who's familiar with law or deals in it on a regular basis knows that compromises happen all the time. A plea bargain is the compromise in a criminal case, just like a settlement is in a civil case. So it's a necessary process, but how good or how bad a plea bargain is a lot of times is dependent on the evidence that is present for that particular case.
As a judge, would you take an active role in helping to set up a plea bargain if you saw a problem with the case?
If the attorneys wanted me to do that, I think a judge should always be open. If attorneys properly come before the judge and say, Judge, we're stuck here, or we'd like some input, obviously all parties would have to be there. And I think within reason, you can talk to them and help them get a case maybe worked out. A judge all the time talks to attorneys in ways that might help them get a matter resolved without the parties having to be in the courtroom. If that happens, I think that's good for everyone because that frees up resources and time of the court to move on to other things.
Attorney Tom Kauffman, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks.